brought so many changes, the biggest of which was dealing with non-human species for the first time in his life. He'd grown up in a system based on hatred of anything that was not like him. His grade school education included training in how to kill all of the, quote, lower races, end quote. In the GFL, however, he had to play against and alongside those races. He'd entered the league as an uneducated bigot, but quickly learned that his attitude would not bring him the thing he wanted most in life: victory on the football field. Quentin learned to let go of his preconceived notions, learn how to evaluate each sentient as an individual. Those once hated aliens became his teammates, then became his friends, and soon after, became his family. Discovering the universe and meeting new races. Those two things had seemed like a dream. Now, that dream had become a nightmare. Quentin Barnes stood on the small bridge of the Touchback, the ship that carried him and his Krakens from system to system, from game to game. His body throbbed with pain, remnants of being smashed around like a toy when enemy rounds had ripped open his gun cabin. He'd been in an actual starship battle. He'd taken out a pirate fighter craft. In doing so, had he taken the life of a sentient? Quentin had damn near died himself as the cabin depressurized, had almost been ripped into space through a hole far too small for his 7-foot-tall, 380-pound body. His friends, Crazy George Starcher and Mumo Killowee, had saved him, risked their own lives to pull him out. Quentin looked to the bridge's sealed bulkhead doors, where George and Mumo stood. His two teammates stared out the bridge's floor-to-ceiling viewport windows. George looked shocked and mesmerized. Mumo had no expression, at least not one Quentin could read on Key's black-eyed face. Stoic as ever, Mumo patiently waited for what might come next. Quentin turned to look at the 4-man bridge crew dressed in their neat orange and black uniforms. They sat motionless at workstations that faced a holographic image of the Touchback. Portions of the holographic ship glowed red, others yellow, indicating the damage suffered during the pirate attack. So much damage. How long would it take to bring the Touchback's engines back online? Too long. There seemed to be no chance for escape. Captain Kate Cheevers had steered the Touchback away from the pursuing pirates, had fled in the only direction that gave the ship a chance. In doing so, the Touchback had crossed the Splorno Dynasty border into Krawat Jihad's sovereign territory, out of the frying pan and into the fire. She sat slumped in her captain's chair, staring up the viewport like everyone else. She held the clear bottle by its narrow neck, slowly turning it, making the brown liquid inside slosh and wave. Her body language told the story. She had lost all hope. Quentin stood in the middle of the bridge with Masal the Efficient, a 3-foot-tall quiff leader, and the hulking, long-armed, 8-foot heavy G monster known as Michael Kimberlin. Like George, Mumo, the bridge crew, and Captain Kate, they stared out the viewport window at a gnarled black ship so big that it blocked out the endless expanse of space itself. It was hard to process the scale. In fact, Quentin wasn't even sure he could process it, just like he couldn't really process the size of a planet. Could something artificial really be that big? Is that even possible? Kimberlin, Quentin's tutor in the Kraken's starting right offensive guard, had just told everyone the monstrosity outside was a Krawat capital-class warship, the largest known vessels in the entire galaxy. Kimberlin had said something else as well, something that Quentin hoped to hide one he hadn't heard correctly. "Mike," Quentin said, "you want to repeat that?" "Which part?" "The part where I thought you said something like, 'I'm afraid we're all going to die.'" Kimberlin nodded. "No need to repeat it, my friend. You have it word for word. It has been an honor to know you." Quentin shook his head. There was a way out of this. There was always a way out. He turned to Captain Kate. "Can we fight them?" She shook her head and laughed, a dark sound that matched her defeated posture. "Not going to happen. What little firepower we have left probably wouldn't do anything other than make them mad. Our engines are offline, so we can't maneuver. The punch drive hasn't recharged, so we're stuck here. I hope you've made peace with your imaginary Sky Daddy, because you're about to find out if he's real." "We can't give up," Quentin said. "There has to be a way out of this." Captain Kate called down to her bridge crew. "Maurice, kindly adjust the display so Pretty Boy Quarterback can understand what's really happening." One of the orange and black uniformed men sitting at the holo display turned to face Kate. "Yes, Captain," he said. then turned back to his controls. In his 3 years with the Krakens, Quentin hadn't spent much time on the bridge. He never noticed Maurice before. If he had, he would have remembered the crewman's yellow skin. Not a tinge of yellow or a yellow paint, but yellow, like he'd been covered in paint. Quentin had never seen yellow-skinned people before. If he lived through this, he could ask Kimberlin where they came from. Maurice worked the holographic controls floating above his workstation. The glowing image of the touchback took up about half the bridge. It was as long as 2 of the crew lined up head to feet and as tall as one of them from the waist up. The holographic ship started to shrink, slowly at first, then rapidly, reducing to the size of one man, then just an arm, then just a hand. As it shrank, Quentin saw another glowing image fuzz into view, an irregular thing that looked like a chipped, pitted boulder and was clearly far bigger than the display area allowed. The touchback image shrank to the size of one of Quentin's fingers. Only then did the boulder have enough room to be shown in its entirety, a ball some 12 feet in diameter. "I won," Quentin said. Kimberlin nodded. "Yes, it is quite spectacular." Quentin again looked out the viewport to the approaching Krawat vessel. The ship didn't look that different from space itself. It was black with lots of little lights. But the ship's blackness had a gnarled, corrugated texture, like bunched up tree roots that had punched through the dirt and been exposed to decades of rain and snow. Crazy George Starcher walked toward the floor-to-ceiling viewport. He reached a hand out halfway, as if he wanted to touch the object out there, but he knew he could not. "The old ones," he said. "They have come for us." Quentin shook his head. "They're not that old. They've only been around about 4 centuries. Kimberlin's big chest shook in a silent laugh. He thought it was funny, and Quentin knew why. Quentin had just shared historical information learned through many hours of Kimberlin's tutoring. Quentin had worked hard to leave his prejudiced upbringing behind and become a more educated person, a better person, and yet he and his teammates might die right here at the hands of an alien race. Die before they could win a GFL title. Like a silent dream, the giant, black, gnarled ship suddenly reached, a chunk of it flowing like colorless molten metal, or a glob of rigid pudding, extending out toward the touchback. Quentin had a brief thought of one of the educational holos Kimberlin had shown him, of an amoeba extending a gooey arm to engulf some microscopic prey, then a vibration rolled through the touchback. Maurice checked a readout. He turned to Captain Kate. "Let me guess," she said. "We've been enclosed?" "Yes, Captain." She nodded, took a swig, then somehow managed to slouch even deeper in her chair. "I'm a genius like that. Are they coming in?" Maurice turned back to his controls. "Looks like they're creating a seal over the landing bay. They're pressurizing." "Damn it," Kate said. "Well, just open the shuttle bay doors before they blow them open. If we do manage to get out of this alive, that's one less thing we have to fix." "Yes, Captain." Quentin looked around the bridge, waiting for Kate or one of the 4 bridge crew members to do something. "We can't just wait for death," he said. "Should we send out a distress signal? Go to the lifeboats and eject?" Captain Cheever spun a slow circle in her chair. She stopped when she faced Quentin. "You want to do something, pretty boy?" Quentin nodded. She smiled that smile that made him so uncomfortable. "Maurice," she said, "are they on board yet?" Maurice had to clear his throat to speak. The sense of hopelessness was giving way to one of fear. "Yes, Captain," he said. It looks like they're spreading out, either running bypasses on the internal doors or cutting through them. At least 5 appear to be headed toward the bridge." Kate pointed a finger at Quentin with her left pointer finger, her left thumb up high. "Bang, bang, Barnes. Our visitors are on their way here. If you think you can do something other than crap your pants, well, be my guest. Maurice, do we have atmospheric integrity?" "Yes, Captain," he said. "The touchback is completely engulfed. We have full pressure everywhere." "Well, then open all the internal doors," Kate said. "We don't want to make the Crowleys any more angry than they'll already be." Quentin watched as the bridge's thick bulkhead doors slid open, revealing the corridor beyond. He looked around the bridge, staring at each person in disbelief. "You're all just going to let them walk in here?" Kate nodded. She took another drink. She pressed a button in the armrest of her chair. "Attention all personnel," she said. Quentin heard her speaking, but also heard her words amplified by the speaker film out in the corridor. He knew that the rest of the ship was hearing the same words. "This is Captain Kate. We have been boarded. Stay where you are. Do not try to reach the lifeboats. If you want to live, do not make threatening gestures, fight, or in any way resist the boarders. Just take a seat, stay calm, and await further instructions." She clicked the button again, then slouched back in her chair and took a long drink from the bottle. Moments later, they heard sounds coming from out in the corridor. Quentin and the others turned to face the open door. They waited. You have to read the book to find out what happens. That's the ability of